Welcome to the Crimeycade. I'm back, Sir the Crime Fighter, Stephen Lucas, back with episode 52. Yeah, 52 episodes of this podcast. And they say most new podcasts don't last more than 10 episodes. Well, I've gone 52 episodes, not necessarily every week, but I've done enough for an entire year, so I guess pat myself on the back a little bit. So let's get into it. Last week, our podcast guest, and I got to get that window up because I don't have the advance. John Parrish was our guest last week, and as you know, had some technical difficulties going on. It appeared fine on my end, and from the Twitch stream, I did not appear to lag. There appeared to have been some sort of internet disruption up in the Chicago area, although it was just kind of sporadic. So the interview didn't turn out to the standard I would like it to have been, and I still have to edit this thing down to eliminate all the technical glitches so somebody can watch the replay without having to deal with troubleshooting the internet that we've had to do during the course of the stream. You know, it is what it is, and hopefully, and maybe in a few months, we'll do a do-over because I could not get on track with all the interruptions with the stream, so they'll be down the road, however. But also, Sunday afternoon, I did a bonus podcast. Greg Zakundiak popped in what was only available on Sunday afternoon, so I brought him in, did an extra podcast right after the time change on the 9th. And if you didn't listen to this, had a bit, the podcast towards the back end of this took a turn that I did not expect. I didn't expect to talk a lot about the controversy, Billy Mitchell versus the World, or Twin Galaxies, or other gaming rivals, but you had to get something out in the open that he had. He was connected to the whole mess in a minor form. He had all those Twin Galaxy tapes, he said, to review. Find out for the first time that Dwayne Richard was trying to do some sort of head fake with Billy Mitchell, kind of take the heat from him getting the max out score on Pac-Man played on a class of 81 board. I've met Dwayne Richard. Maybe down the road, maybe I should get him on the podcast. I don't know how willing he would be to appear on my podcast, but the only time I have, there's a couple of times where I've met him when he's in the Midwest. Obviously, T20, the very first T20 I was in, and it was a side tournament, and I was in a shootout against him over, Xenophobe, Blaster, Black Widow. There's a couple other games in that mix. They were Brian Cullen games, except for one. Blaster wasn't. So I was in a shootout with him. Obviously, he was there for the Man vs. Snake movie premiere in Ottumwa, Iowa. He was there for Big Bang years ago. But if you haven't heard this podcast, tune in because it took a turn and I didn't expect it. So it is what it is. High scores. This is from the last so many days at the Goblin Ghost Arcade. Andrew Wasco, the Monday Mystery game was Super Fortress Lacrosse #2. Different, not your standard shoot 'em up. It kind of plays different. You have to reach a scoring threshold to advance into the game, but you have unlimited lives and a time limit. But he took the high at 1.9 million. I believe he's cleared a loop. He also took the house high on the prototype game by Milestar, Gottlieb's Screw Loose, which was unreleased at 150,000 points. Sky Skipper bugs me because I had the house high on Sky Skipper and King Cam Blackman Brendan Travis beat me. Anyway, broke 50,000. I'll be heading there this weekend to try and take that score back. Ben Falls is still the gamer to watch. He is equal contention of winning Gamer of the Year alongside Andrew Wasco. He has captured the house high on the old Space Invaders, the game that got me into gaming all those many years ago. Space Invaders was the one. Ben Falls took the house high at Galvin Ghost at nearly 50,000 points, which is very impressive. So Ben Falls is probably going to be the top contender fairly shortly for the Gamer of the Year award. Further down, Jamie Tibbetts has, and I'm not even going to try, Sunduki Striker, which was a very hard shoot 'em up that was unveiled 2 weeks ago. Jamie Tibbetts, who we don't hear a lot from lately. We haven't heard a lot from him lately. But he was there in attendance, and he played that shoot 'em up and got the high at 97 million points, only halfway through stage #2. And we don't talk about pinball too much, but Dan Weingart took the arcade high for Pulp Fiction. However, the world record for that is over 200 million points, but there's only 7 digits in the score. So, yeah, if you roll the score, you're going to be rolling around a bunch of times because there's only goes up to 10 million and then rolls over. So, follow the Crimeycade podcast on Facebook, facebook.com/Crimeycade. I need 100 followers. Chase for tokens. Pretty much the order is the same. It's just Andrew Wasco is increasing his token count. Masi Segovian finally got over the 7,500 mark. Jamie Tibbetts got over the 7,300 mark. And the power rankings, I moved down to number 10th. Ben Falls is starting to move up. He's at 18th. So he's got a ways to go to get up into the top 15, but the order is pretty much the same for the most part. So, one last thing. Yes, Gamer of the Year odds, I'm doing that for Galvin Ghost Arcade. Yes, pretty much the same odds as last week. So, we'll see how it goes. There's only 5 months left. Oh, I can remember this. Arcade Wars. Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, not Turbo, but regular Champion Edition is the game of the month. I do want to note, only Underground Retrocade has put in scores, but Galvin Ghost does not have this. So I don't know how this is going to go. And One Up Arcade, who is running Arcade Wars, did announce that they will have their final coin drop in May. That arcade down in Australia is closing. Okay, my guest tonight. Tonight is my arcade restore episode. I have 3 guests here tonight, so I'm going to introduce them one at a time. And introducing first, from South Carolina, he is the host of Galaxy Games 843. He does restoration of claw and vending machines, although he's done arcades in the past also. But here is his intro video. And welcome in Matt Schwartz.
Hey, good evening. Thanks for having me.
All right, introducing second. He doesn't have an intro video, but he does have a YouTube channel. He is from California. He has the YouTube channel Biggest Sonic Fan. He handles Sega Model 2 boards and creates custom adapters. Here is Rob Krum.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you.
And introducing third, he has his YouTube channel Operation Restore. He does cabinet restores. He has a full-blown arcade in his house. And here is his intro video. And whoops, wow. StreamYard made some changes lately, so I'm still trying to get used to their little changes to the interface, but welcome in Josh Manypenny.
Hi.
And I can't hear the machines in the
How
background, so you seem to be good.
I turned them down.
And you got a lot of arcade games in the back.
That's quite impressive.
Yes.
How many arcade machines do you own currently?
Maybe close to 40.
And
they're not all in
house?
here, but no, those are some in the garage as well.
So you rent. Okay, so you have 40 games. Do they all work?
Various states, yeah. There's only a few that don't work, and then I have a few project cabinets that I got boards for, but never have tested the boards yet or anything. It's just plans, I guess, at this point.
And somebody knows you, the Wicked Arcade down in Texas. That would be Jojo Robles.
Yes, Jojo.
All right, let's go around the room. What was the first? So each one of you will start with Salty Freeman. Gosh, I got to remember your names. We had Rob.
Sure. Yes.
Start with you.
Alrighty.
So the first question for everybody is, what was the very first arcade game or console game you ever put your hands on and it got you hooked into gaming?
It's actually a handheld, believe it or not. My parents got me a Sega Game Gear for Christmas, and I would play Sonic 1 as they would go back and forth between their parents. It was about a 2-hour drive at the time, and I needed something to do in the car so they could keep their sanity. So I would play Sonic 1 on the Game Gear. I had the car adapter, I had the carrying case, I had all these adapters and stuff. And from there, my love for Sonic grew into the comics. And then I actually had an XI, the JVC XI, which is a Sega CD Genesis hybrid released by JVC. And it was cheaper at the time than buying the 2 units, the Genesis and the CD at the same time. So that's why I ended up with it. But it's in too loved condition to be resold or anything. So that's going to be a repair video on its own. So yeah, it was the Sega Game Gear.
This is the first time I've ever heard of it's usually an arcade machine or a console that gets a person hooked into gaming. This is the first time I've heard somebody say a portable. Any
I'm surprised
portal.
there's no Tetris fans out there. You know, a lot of people started with Tetris because I believe it was bundled with the Game Boy.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was the pack in. Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, what was your first game or console?
So I think the first game or console that got me hooked on video gaming, back in the early 80s, it would have been Taito in the arcade. It would have been Jungle King or Jungle Hunt. And we also had an Atari 2600 when I was a kid. And I remember when the port came out for the Atari 2600 for Jungle Hunt, I was super excited because, my dad and I are like, oh, we can go buy this. We can play Jungle Hunt at home. And we brought it home and plugged it into the 2600. And we were so disappointed. It was awful. Like, just so hard to play and just like nothing like the arcade experience. That's where I started.
Yeah, well, system limitations and stuff.
Well, as a kid, you don't understand that though,
Although I found it much easier to play than the arcade counterpart.
Yeah, which can be challenging for sure.
Very. There was another one. Jungle King was converted to Jungle Hunt because of
Licensing issue,
copyright.
yeah.
Yeah, using Tarzan without permission. But there was the third one. It was called Pirate Pete.
Pirate Pete, yep.
Which is a reskin. I don't know if you ever saw that or played it, but
I played it in MAME, but I've never played it like on an actual cabinet.
okay. Josh, what was your first experience with a video game, arcade or console?
Atari 2600, Pac-Man, and Dig Dug. I think it was Dig Dug. And my first arcade machine was Millipede that I played. I was probably 6 years old, maybe 7. And my fondest arcade machine that I...
Go ahead. Sorry.
My fondest arcade machine from a kid was definitely Operation Wolf. And but that's kind of how I fell in love with arcade machine as a kid, was Operation Wolf, although it wasn't my first.
And you say you played Pac-Man on Atari 2600. Did you play it before did you see the arcade version before you played the Atari 2600 version?
No, I didn't I wasn't at that age and stuff when I played Atari 2600. I never got to go to arcades, so that's all I had known.
Okay, from there though, you didn't get to go to arcades, but somehow you got to a point, you got to experience an arcade sometime, and now you have a basement full of them.
Yes. My first arcade machine I ever played was Millipede, and I mean, I'm going to just say it because it's true, but my grandma used to go to the bar when she, get a drink or something like that, and she would give me a handful of quarters and tell me to, don't leave that machine and go have fun. So I would just pop quarters in and play. And that's how I got to play my first arcade machine. And when I made a trip to an arcade as a little bit older kid, it was Operation Wolf. And that's the game I would put all my money in.
Okay.
Now,
around the room. Oh,
as far as how I got... No, I wasn't sure if how I got into it here was watching John's arcade, and I'm like, I first had thought like I don't have all the room for them machines, so I built an arcade machine and used Raspberry Pi with an image that had a bunch of games, and then I started watching John's arcade, and I found Arcade Jason and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, these guys are fixing this stuff up, and I don't see why I can't do it. So then I bought my first arcade machine, and I just kept buying them.
Yeah, I wish.
Every
Yeah, I kind of wish I bought more of them sooner, but prices have gone up and up and up and up and up because everybody's going to open up classic arcades all over the country. I'm happy for that. It's not so great for a collector or somebody that wants a small little arcade in their house. Oh, I thought you had more. Never. I'll move on here. Yeah, I had arcade games in my basement, and I had to get them out if I wanted any more because I didn't want to deal with stairs. And hauling an arcade machine up and down stairs is very dangerous. You slip, and you might be done for if you're on the bottom end. But I had a new garage built with a room in the back, and all the arcade games came out of the basement and got put in the back of the garage, so I have them all on the ground floor. Now I just need more. Only have 5.
That's similar to how I got started with collecting arcade cabinets too. I had bought a house, and I'd always wanted an arcade cabinet since I was a kid. You know, watching Ricky Schroeder on Silver Spoons, and he had his own arcade game. So as a kid, I was like, I'd love to have some arcade games. And you know, once I got older, yeah, I had smaller houses and didn't have the room. And once I finally got a house that had a big empty, full size, empty basement, unfinished, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go find one of those arcade games. And I bought a Super Pac-Man and a Soul Calibur 2 that had been converted from a Mortal Kombat 2, which at the time I didn't realize. So those were my first 2 games. And then I kind of got the bug. You know, I was playing MAME on my computer, and I felt like that was kind of like the gateway drug as to buying arcade games. And so I started searching around Craigslist at that time, looking for arcade games. And all I was able to find was a guy that had a broken Miss Pac-Man. It didn't work. And he wanted like something super cheap. It was like $100 or something like that. So I was like, well, how hard could it be? You know, this is technology from, well, at the time it was 25, 30 years, old at that time. So I went and picked up this Miss Pac-Man, and I, started researching, and I got on the Claw forums, and I'm asking questions, and I'm learning how to use a digital multimeter and all this fun stuff. And I was able to get it working, and it was actually my first restore. So then it kind of sparked a whole thing. And before I knew it, my basement looked just like Josh was here. I had probably 30 games all redone, all fixed up and working. And I was living in Ohio at the time. And then I got transferred to South Carolina, and I had to sell all but 2 of my games, all but 2 of them, because here in the South, we don't have basements. So I had nowhere to put all those games.
Here in the South, where's the South?
I'm in South Carolina, Charleston, South
Oh,
Carolina.
there's no basements in South Carolina?
No, at least not by the coast.
Well, yeah, I imagine not by the coast, but inland quite a bit.
Possibly. I live right on the coast in Charleston, so no basements here.
Yeah, and I have to worry about hurricanes too.
We've had our fair share.
I know. I've seen plenty of videos where people have stacked up cabinets to get it off or get them off the ground. They sacrificed a few empty cabinets, but they got them off the ground because of flooding.
So are you talking about Jeff at Arcade Body Shop when he put Pac-Man down to save Tron and things like that?
Yes, that's an example. I did see that one.
Funny story. I actually ended up finishing the restore on that Pac-Man that he started. Because he's only 90 miles north of me. So I finished the restore. In fact, I did the stencils on that cabinet, and it's on my YouTube channel.
That's interesting. Rob, so you're known for, I guess I'll get your answer. You're known for doing, gosh, I think I got off track because I've been listening to everybody's answers.
No worries.
How many you got an arcade? You have arcade games in your house?
I
Or how
only
many?
have one machine still in the process of restoration, so I am very amateur at this. So I am definitely the amateur here. I have a machine that I picked up off Craigslist because I was constantly looking for a monitor that would work with my Model 2 boards. Model 2 uses a 24 kilohertz signal, and that's not compatible with the 15 hertz older arcade games or the modern 60 hertz CRT televisions. So you either need an adapter or you need a proper monitor. And back there in Joshua's arcade, you can see Virtua Fighter. Is that Josh?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
picked up the
It's
Virtua
actually
Fighter.
Virtua Fighter.
Oh, go ahead.
I believe it's Fighters Remix.
It's actually Virtua Fighter Remix.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and
oh,
it
that's
is
the remix.
it's ran off of the board that Die Hard came on.
Yes, so the STV, the Saturn board, right?
Yep.
Okay. So
Yes.
Basically, I went to pick up this $250. It was advertised as Dynamite Cop, actually, and it ended up being the Japanese Dynamite Cop or Dynamite Deca 2 because it was the spiritual successor to Die Hard arcade, which was Dynamite Deca in Japan, and this machine was in deplorable condition. It said bad graphics, which, oh yeah, it was bad graphics, but that machine looked like it was locked up outside a laundromat in the bad part of town for many years.
Yeah.
And I got it home and I'm thinking to myself, I know next to nothing about this. I know about the board, but what else is in here? And so I quickly started searching on the internet and finding what JAMA was and what Model 2 connectors were. I knew that I had to adapt it from one to another, and I couldn't find any good solutions. There was one in Japan that I had imported, but it was okay. And I ended up finding a Virtua Fighter harness because as I slowly removed the spray paint, the latex spray paint off this machine, that I discovered that it was originally a Virtua Fighter machine. And if any of you are familiar with the original Virtua Fighter machines, they had the mirrored graphics on the side and a shiny finish. And it just destroyed me to discover that they had ripped off these decals before they painted over it. And but I have found an original harness which I will be installing, and because my restoration philosophy is try to keep it close to original while making modern tweaks that improve it in a way that is nearly invisible. I've recapped the monitor. I've bought a new power supply from Twisted Quarter. They've been out of stock for a while on those, though. But that's kind of how I started with adapters, because Virtua Fighter is a Model 1 game. I play Model 2 games, so I thought, well, what's the difference between the two? And I looked up a site called Solid Orange by Twisted Symphony, and he has a diagram of these Model 1 and Model 2 filter boards, which is the input-output. They don't use the standard JAMA edge that a lot of the classic games have. And I said, I could map these to a different, with wires, and I could use the Model 1 harness on a Model 2 game. So that kind of simmered in my head as other projects took precedence, and over time I've built all sorts of adapters, and even have a few clients who are like, can you make me an adapter? I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do it.
Some of the games for running on the Model 2 hardware for Sega, obviously Daytona USA, that series.
Yes, Daytona, the original Model 2.
Yep.
And then
Virtua Cop.
Virtua Cop, also original Model 2. House of the Dead, which is Model 2C. Fans of the fighting game series Virtua Fighter will note that Virtua Fighter 2 was on the original and the 2A. I think the 2A. Then
Yes.
Sonic the Fighters was on 2B, and Fighting Vipers was on 2B. In fact, I've got a special treat here. If I can boot this up, I have a capture device which I've customized to show a custom Sonic the Fighters ROM that I've made just for this. The Crimeycade podcast. This is using real hardware that I've researched the game and discovered enough about it to create my own graphics in it. I'm using the existing assets within the game, but I've found a way to put them all together. And my ultimate goal is either to create a ROM which people can use to diagnose their Model 2 boards and say, this chip is specifically wrong because these values I can't get correct, or make my own fighting game, which would be absolutely incredible to take to arcade shows. So I thought people would enjoy that, a little custom the Crimeycade podcast Sonic the Fighters. This is running on real hardware, and to prove it, I can just press the start button, and here I've booted my game. So research is a lot of fun.
I did look at your channel. Let me throw this up here because you've dug through the ROMs at Sonic the Fighters. And by the way, this game, Sonic the Fighters, is on the arcade floor at Galvin Ghost Arcade. So
yes, it is.
But there are a couple of hidden characters. Well, I wouldn't say they're hidden, but they were not fully implemented, that they were not selectable in the game.
Correct.
An unused final boss, which is based on Dr. Eggman in, I guess...
In a tank outfit.
Yes.
Tank mech.
And then a character known as Honey.
Yes,
Honey the cat. It's a rabbit or what it is.
It's a cat based on a franchise earlier in the game. AM2 first made a game called Fighting Vipers, and in it was a character named Honey in Japan. In US, she came over as Candy, and she was inserted into the game either as a joke, or intended to be selectable, but the development ran out of time. It's not clear why she was scrapped, but she does have her own move set. It's close to Knuckles' move set, but there's subtle differences. And Sonic the Fighters, ever since that character was discovered back in, I want to say 2006, I've been interested in Sonic the Fighters and the secrets it holds. And eventually, me and a friend a few years ago discovered the debug unlock code. So you can access debug mode, and it's got a whole bunch of goodies. So, but I don't want to take any more time on that. I think the other people here need their spotlight here.
This podcast could go anywhere for an hour and a half, 1 hour to 3 hours, and the longest one went to like 3 hours, 40 minutes. But I had just one guest. We know each other so well, and then he had a lot to say, and so do I, and like the hours just flew. Like we couldn't even. The clock just kept running, and we had more to say, and it was like I've had him on twice. So because of this. So Josh, I guess we'll go with the next question. Around the room, your history with gaming, early memories, how did your interest in gaming evolve over time? Josh? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Like I said, I first started with. Yes.
Go ahead.
As I mentioned, I started with 2600, and my next gaming console would have been NES. Loved Mario 3. Then I believe I went to Sega Genesis from there. And let's see, that was that. And then there was all kinds of games I played for that. Then I believe after that, there was a Sega Saturn, maybe. I did have a Sega Saturn. That might have been my next one. Then PS1, and I've went through the PlayStation, clear to PlayStation 5. But my favorite console was PS3, a game called Rock Band. It was a rhythm game. I downloaded probably like 1,500 DLC songs for that. And actually on the PlayStation Network, I was number one for the longest time on the Power Up collection, because anytime I played, and I played every day, I would have my wife would play with me and my kids. So we always had like an actual 4-piece band. And the longest time I was at the number one spot in the PSN network for that specific goal, or whatever you would call it. So that made me happy. But PS4 and PS5 I didn't get into too much. I do own them. Somewhere I've been collecting arcade machines for about 5 years now, I believe. My first one, I was after an Operation Wolf in Pennsylvania, and I kept messaging the guy, and he's finally made a day for me to come over, and it was like a few weeks out, and I was like, cool, I can make it there. And then it was like gone, and it kind of upset me. So I bought another shooting game. Now that I'm on the spot, I can't think, but it's Silent Scope. I bought and
that's a big cabinet. A big,
so I bought that.
Cabinet.
That is. That's so much fun, though.
It is.
It's a very technical cabinet.
And I got that game first, and then I found another Operation Wolf like in Canton, and I was like, I got to go get it. And I went and got it. And then that was Operation Wolf was my actual first restore, if that's what you would call. I personally would have liked to restored that cabinet now that I've been through other cabinets and I've learned what works best and for me and what don't work so well. I think I kind of wish now that I have more knowledge, I would have been able to get an Operation Wolf and do that now rather than when I first started. So
Josh, can I jump in and ask you a quick question?
Oh yeah.
Did you say you're in Ohio?
Yes.
Can you give me the general whereabouts? Because you're talking about Pennsylvania and
Lisbon.
Canton. Okay. Well, I'm originally from Youngstown. And it just makes me wonder if any of those games behind you, or any of the games that have passed through your hands, may have passed through my hands as well.
It's possible, yeah.
Because we were one county away, right?
Yeah, you would have been Mahoning County, so I'm south of you.
Very cool, though. Very cool. Small world.
Yes.
Yeah, and he was going to join sooner or later. This guy crashes every podcast at least once or twice because he insists on being the star of the show. But Cody, the crasher, yeah, the ginger, and yeah, I don't know. I've taken him into the game room. He seems to be more comfortable in there than my other cat, but he would sleep on top of the cabinets when they were in the basement at times. So, keep going. Matt, how did your gaming history evolve over the years up to this point in time?
Yeah, so mine had a big gap in the middle of it. So I started with the Atari 2600, and of course going to the arcades. I was lucky; I had 3 different arcades in my town. I had one in a shopping plaza, I had one in the mall, and I had Chuck E. Cheese. And back then, Chuck E. Cheese had actual arcade games, not like it is today. So I had three arcades in my town, and we used to go from arcade to arcade to arcade, especially once I got my driver's license. And that was around the same time that Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat 1 came out. So we were bouncing from arcade to arcade playing those different things. But as far as consoles, I had the Atari 2600, and I moved on to the NES. And then I kind of took a pause from consoles. I was spending time in the arcade, and then always doing things with my friends, meeting girls, how that runs. So it kind of pulled me away from console life. And I think the next console I bought was a Nintendo Wii. So I had something to play with my kids and get them into the Nintendo world, because I think Nintendo, even in the arcade and of course consoles, are probably my favorite systems, especially when it comes to restoring games or working on games. Nintendo arcade cabinets are my favorite to work on. Also, I've done probably 15 Donkey Kong restores in general.
50?
15.
15. That's still a lot.
I've restored a lot of games. Because it's funny. I told the story about how I had to sell a bunch of my games after I acquired them and fixed them up and restored them. Well, I actually made quite a bit of money doing that. And it was so funny because when I got here to South Carolina, I was actually, because I got transferred for work, and I was actually here for 3 months before my family joined me. They were still in Ohio. So every night after working on the weekends, I had literally nothing to do but search for games, and then go drive and pick up games, and then bring them back and fix them. And, and again, I didn't have a basement here, so I had nowhere to put them all. So I would have to sell them a lot of times. And it became kind of a little like side thing for me. It was like a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
But I still have a couple of my original games here, and a couple games I've restored since then. But I wish I had the room to have more games. But that's kind of been my journey about games in general. And to this day, like I think I like working on games and restoring games and repairing games more than I like playing games today. As funny as that sounds.
You do have a game shop. I did
Not
notice.
officially. Not officially.
Not officially?
So not officially.
Okay.
Most of the work when I restore games, I restore games right out of my garage, and it's just kind of a hobby for me at this point. But
Okay.
I'm still trying to, raise my Donkey Kong high score. I still play Donkey Kong a lot.
So I was looking through your YouTube channel, and it looked like you had a video game shop.
So okay,
Unless that's
so
not yours.
It's not my store. So my YouTube channel is a little bit different. I made a random video back in 2019. A friend of mine and I got a call from a business contact of his, and he had a vending machine, an old Coke machine that he had a business property, and there was a building on the property, but the building had fallen into disarray and he had it demolished. Well, Coke at the time was doing vending services, and they had a machine inside the building. And when the company came in to demolish the building, they brought the Coke machine and set it outside and then demolished the building. And then, so this guy who owned the land called Coke and said, "Hey, our building was demolished. Can you please come pick up your machine?" Coke said, "Sure, we'll get around to it." Well, 20 years later, 15 years later, whatever it was, they had never came to pick it up. So he called us.
I saw that video, by the way.
Yes, he
found
called us.
$750 in it, almost.
No, not that much. It was only 75, but still.
Oh, okay.
He called. Well, there's probably a few videos like that, but in mine we found 75. But anyway, so he called us and he's like, "Do you guys?" Because we were just trying to start a vending business.
Mm-hmm.
The job that I was transferred to South Carolina for closed up shop. So I was living the severance life and looking for a new job. And in the meantime, we were trying to start this vending business. And so he knew we were into vending, so he called us to come pick up this machine. So I thought it might make a fun video to document going to pick up the machine and then bringing it back and drilling out the locks and seeing how much money was inside. Well, when we opened it up, it was completely gross. The cans inside were from 2004. This was in 2019, so they were 15 years old. And we found about $75 inside. Well, so I made that video and it did really well. And I was like, maybe vending and arcade stuff on YouTube would be another thing I could do for fun and, to be my creative, expressive outlook thing or whatever you want to call it. Right. So I started making repair videos on whatever I could think of. I started doing, I didn't do a whole lot of restores because, you know how many hours go into restoring a cabinet. And I was also watching John's Arcade a lot at that point in my life too. And just seeing he was doing like 15 episode series on restores. I'm like, I cannot commit to making 15 episodes about an arcade restore or all that. And, so I really focused on, arcade machines and vending machines and claw machines now, and kind of growing the business and making some extra money with vending and amusement devices. So that's kind of the path that I've gone down when it comes to all that. But I got my start with that first Super Pac-Man machine I ever bought.
Awesome. Matt, how did your experiences evolve? You're in California, so you're in, can't be that far from Sunnyvale, which is the home of Atari.
Rob in California.
Thanks. Rob in California. Oh, yeah. Did I mix you guys up or something?
I think you did. You called me Matt.
Oh, okay. Rob from California. Yes.
That's okay. It happens.
Well, I'm looking at your screen names. I was like, I'm going to start calling you by your screen names now.
You can do that. That's all good.
It might be easier for me, but
a lot of people call me Galaxy. It's all good.
I go by
GG. That'll work. Okay. GG. Rob.
Yes.
You're in California.
Yes.
Silicon Valley. A lot of video games came out of there.
Yes.
How did your interest in gaming evolve over time?
Started pretty much. I have vague memories of the 2600. I was fairly young at the time. My dad got an NES for Christmas for himself, but it was really for me. One of those presents you get for your kid who's like 3 years old, but it's really for you. We played Mario. We moved, and then the arcades happened. Southern California had a huge arcade boom, and there were a bunch of different kinds of cabinets in which all kinds of different games would be thrown in. Mortal Kombat was the big one, and Mortal Kombat kind of dominated arcades until Street Fighter 3, I think. And then not much happened in the arcade probably until Street Fighter 4, in which we had a Japanese arcade called what was it called? I used to go there. It was a mecca for arcades, and some of the big Street Fighter competitors would even train there just to play. And
round one?
Not round one.
Were they all candy cabinets?
Most were. Most were candy cabinets. But they did have some rather large cabinets for some of the featured games. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was there. Almost every mall in Southern California had some sort of arcade, but that kind of phased out in the early 2000s, unfortunately. And there's not a big arcade presence here aside from round one anymore, which thankfully does have some of the classics, some of the fighting games, but it's not nearly as much as you'd see like Galloping Ghost or even some of your favorites. Local mom and pop arcade shops are just having a little bit of a hard time. COVID hit especially hard. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say we had a guest on a couple of weeks ago. James Carter is looking for an arcade that has an original Dig Dug, so he can pursue the world record on actual
Wow.
arcade hardware.
Yeah.
But he's in Los Angeles. There isn't any arcades anywhere close to him.
That's
Like 50 miles.
Little Tokyo should have an arcade or two around there, but probably not a Dig Dug. Maybe there's a barcade in Los Angeles that might have a Dig Dug. So I will see if I can get that information to you. But my love for my specific Model 2 infection became apparent to me when I went to a GameWorks, which was a Sega Universal joint venture for arcades. And they were going to expand it into something even bigger, but that never quite happened. I went to a GameWorks for my 10th birthday, and there they had a Sonic the Fighters cabinet. I thought, this is incredible. This is Sonic the Hedgehog in 3D for the first time, true 3D. And I was no good at it because I was 10 years old and there were 3 buttons and a joystick. You know, what's a little kid to do but besides button mash. So I wasted a bunch of credits to get to the final boss, the final boss, which is mainly designed to be a quarter eater called Metal Sonic. And then after that, there would be a bonus boss, which if you beat, you would get the credits. And I never got the credits as a kid. And I always thought the game was pretty interesting. And then it got a home release for the GameCube in a compilation called Sonic Gems Collection, in which Sega packaged a bunch of their older works in an emulated environment for people to enjoy. And there was Sonic R, which was a Saturn title, although the game used the PC port. Sonic CD, which also used the PC port, not the Sega CD port for some reason. And then Sonic the Fighters, which was a genuine arcade emulated release. Sega had released prior Model 2 titles in Japan, Sega Rally Championship, Virtua Fighter 2, and Fighting Vipers for the PS2 in a Sega Ages collection, and this was their first time releasing something on the GameCube. So it uses the actual arcade ROM, and I was part of a group that would study unused contents in video games. I was always fascinated by what didn't make it in the game. What was the sprite used for? Like, basically, it's called digital archaeology at this point. And we would find these things and say, what's this? Where would this go in the game? And someone in 2006 discovered honey in that arcade port on the Sonic Gems collection. And ever since then, I've been fascinated by Model 2, its hardware, and its limited but classic game set.
I know there's a website called hiddenpalace.org that kind of covered all this, or at least there was a compilation site.
Yes, Hidden Palace and the Cutting Room Floor. I'm very familiar with both. In fact, I have worked with DRX over at the Hidden Palace before, way before the Hidden Palace was even a thing. But Hidden Palace even is a reference to Hidden Palace Zone found, which was a cut level in Sonic 2. So cut content has kind of been my driving force for video games for many years. And no one's been exploring the Model 2, kind of the early 3D era of unused content. So that's kind of what I've been trying to pioneer and get documented for these sites.
Did you ever lay your hands on Sega Sonic the arcade?
I have not, but I have a cohort who has. His name is Sudden Desu, and he has done a write-up on Sega Sonic Arcade, which there are 3 versions out there. There's version 1 and version 3 that we know of. We do not know of version 2, like what it contains or what it looked like. There's a few magazine screenshots, but he has done extensive work into digging into digital archaeology for Sega Sonic, even finding that it was intended to be localized so far as to have Dr. Robotnik from the Sat AM cartoon graphics instead of Dr. Eggman. And he has a write-up on that on his website called suddendesu.net. In fact, we also have the joint write-up is where we discovered debug mode. And there's a write-up on that site, suddendesu.net, that has some debug mode coverage for Sonic the Fighters.
And Sega Sonic the Arcade is at Goblin Ghost Arcade.
It is. It's a Model 1 trackball title.
And believe it or not, that was the first game that I put my hands on when I stepped foot into the Goblin Ghost Arcade for the first time.
It's very interesting looking. It's a very interesting looking cabinet. Intriguing that it's 3 players. Intriguing that Sonic has 2 different cohorts you might not have seen for a long time. Those characters got their spotlight back in Sonic Mania, or the successor to Sonic Mania. I'm not sure which.
Yeah.
But yes, Ray the Squirrel and Mighty the Armadillo. Mighty actually did make his reappearance in Knuckles Chaotix.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a fascinating history of Sonic characters and whether they were used, whether they were unused, and then yeah. So Sega Sonic, I am familiar with it. I haven't actually gotten to play it physically, but it's a very interesting game. I'd love to play it authentically on a trackball if I ever get out to Galloping Ghost.
Well, if you ever come out to Goblin Ghost Arcade, you'll need about 2 going on 3 days.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
to get the full experience of it, because now they're at like 1,029 machines on the floor.
That's crazy.
Nuts.
You're in California.
Yes.
You probably heard about the Banning, that place in Banning, California, where they sold off 1,100 machines in an auction.
Yes, it was like a pinball museum kind of a thing.
Well, there was a lot of arcade games in there too, I believe.
Yes, there were.
And then when I heard that they sold, I was like, only open to the public like once or twice a year, and that would have given Goblin Ghost a run for its money.
Probably.
Yes. All right. Everybody. Next question for everybody. Starting with Josh. Do you have any gaming accomplishments, feats? I don't know if any of you participate in the competitive gaming scene. I certainly am score chasing now. I do have some gaming championships under my belt, but do any of you have any past gaming accomplishments or feats? Starting with Josh.
I don't have any for arcade machines. I mean, maybe in my own house, but the only thing that I could ever say that I excelled on publicly would be my number 1 spot for Power Collection on Rock Band. And I mean, I was number 1 on that leaderboard for years until, I finally quit playing so much. And then I was eventually surpassed. I don't even know where I'm at anymore on there. I haven't been on my PS3 in years to even check. That's really about it for score wise.
What years were you at the top of the leaderboard back then?
Well, I bought Rock Band 3. I want to say it was October. It was either in October or November of 2010-ish, maybe. So for about 2 to 3 years after that. When I bought that game on opening, when it came out at GameStop that day, and I went home and started playing it, and we always played it every day. And it was a few years, at least. But
oh, go ahead.
That's
it. I was thinking, you know, if you held the top spot for a couple of years, I think that should be trading card worthy. Need a Walter J trading card for that accomplishment. Matt, do you have any gaming accomplishments you've done over the years?
I'm going for the record for the most restored arcade games. How about that? That's about as competitive as I've ever got. Like I said, the only game I ever got, and I don't even say good at, was Donkey Kong. Because there's so many people that are way better at Donkey Kong than I am. I know I'll never be able to compete getting kill screens and million-point games. My personal best on Donkey Kong is 290,100. So just trying to break through that 300,000 mark. I always get a random wild barrel or something that just eliminates me before I get there. So, but other than that, no, I've never played enough or been competitive enough to go for those titles or those Twin Galaxy scores or anything like that.
Or tournaments?
I've never even gotten to participate in a tournament. No, it's there's never, I mean, so I guess maybe some online tournaments. I have done some Donkey Kong stuff. There's a group on Facebook. It's not as active as it used to be, but it's called the Kong Club, and it's a really cool Facebook group. If you guys out there into Donkey Kong Arcade or even console Donkey Kong, anything like that, on Facebook, the Kong Club is a great group. And a lot of us used to stream our Donkey Kong games on there. And it was great because I got my personal best live on a stream in that group. And it was nice to have some people cheering me on, while I was doing that. So it was a good time.
Rob?
So I'm trying to think here. Nothing arcade wise. I never really had the skill for that. I would play to finish Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Never really ended up as a high score or anything, but I wouldn't play the meta or the characters who were overpowered and you could do infinite combos, that kind of thing. I think the only leaderboard I ever made was for a Dreamcast game named Shenmue. And there was a game, once you finished the entire game, you had to beat 80 opponents. They were all computer controlled, but there were some very cheap characters which were very difficult to defeat and get a very good time with. But I was in top 50 in the USA. So I felt, even though the Dreamcast was not as successful as intended, I still feel that there was a good majority of players who submitted to that leaderboard, and being in the top 50 was something at my age for 2001. That was exciting. But as far as accomplishments go, I think the research I've done to discover debug modes in Model 2 games, because Fighting Vipers and Sonic the Fighter's code base were based off of the same programming from AM2. So looking into Sonic the Fighter's, finding its debug mode, I was able to look and discover the Fighting Vipers debug mode and even Virtua Fighters 2 debug mode, because they're all coming from the same code base. So after those discoveries, I published them, and I feel that's an accomplishment related to gaming that I'm most proud of.
Okay. Now you're playing the consoles, the arcade games as you were growing up and entering adulthood. Around the room, what inspired you to get into arcade restoration? Now I keep hearing John's Arcade, and yes, I watched his channel as well, and sent questions in over the years. He stopped doing the YouTube channel. He's podcasting still, but with his Arcade Outsiders, and maybe someday I'll have him on this podcast down the road. But what inspired you to get into arcade restoration, and what's your specialty? Starting with Josh.
Well, I watched John's Arcade, and I thought it was cool. And the more I got into watching his channel, because he explained things pretty decent, and he explained it in a way that I was like, I could do this. It doesn't seem that bad. And then I started watching other channels because, once you start watching one, other ones pop up. And then I would watch like Arcade Jason, and I can't think of the name right now, but there's a guy in South Carolina, Joe's Classic Arcade. Him and his brother work on stuff, and
I know them personally.
I just started looking at Facebook Messenger, and so I was like, I went and I bought one that worked, the Silent Scope, and then I went and I got Operation Wolf, and I tinkered around with that one for a long time because it played, the game would play, the monitor came on, but it wouldn't register any hits. So once I figured that all out, I was like, well, the artwork was coming off of it, and there was big giant gashes in the wood and everything like that. So I'm like, I'm going to try to restore it. So I ordered some artwork for it and sanded everything down and painted all the black areas that needed to be painted black, and got it restored, and I had some problems with the monitor, and then I found a channel, Mike's Amateur Monitor Repair, and that guy, he is I've watched so many of his videos, like he would do the same thing every time. So like I was interested in it because I wanted to learn it. So I would watch him, and then he would like go through these monitors the same way every time until he got to it. Maybe this one's a different problem and the next one's a different problem. And he was just such a good teacher. And that's kind of how I learned how to repair monitors. So I learned and got my inspiration from people on YouTube. So that's how I got into it. And then like you said, you like restoring games better than you like playing them, and I'm kind of the same way. It makes me satisfied when I take something that's a basic garbage heap and turn it back into the beautiful machine it was when it was made.
So your special in monitors. So I can barely work a soldering iron. I feel like if I try to do anything, I need 3 hands. I only have 2. One to hold the wire, one to hold the solder, and one to hold the soldering iron. But I only have 2 hands. So that kind of makes it difficult. And then I have no idea what I'm doing. So
I found that they make these PCB holders that I can take the chassis and put it in the clamp, and it sits on the desk. So then I can use my soldering iron on one side, heat them up, and remove the caps. So something's holding the board. That helps me out.
So I need 4 hands for that. A 4th hand for that to hold the board. But
yeah.
Yeah, if I was asked to recap a monitor, I wouldn't know how to do it, and I wouldn't even try because I'm like, I don't know how all this works. I don't know what each part
Yeah.
is and what
Main
it
thing
does.
with-
And go ahead.
It's okay. When I first started out, like K7000, 7400s, I would remove one cap and replace it with another one. But I've done so many chassis now that I just decap the entire board and then put all the caps in and then solder everything in. It seems to move a lot quicker that way. I can basically cap a 7000 in about a half an hour, and it just, I've done so many now that now if I was to do a chassis that I have not done, I would do the remove one, put one in, because I don't want to mess it up. But I've been lucky so far not to put in caps backwards and stuff like that. So
Your specialty is basically cabinet restores and monitors, I'm assuming.
well, yeah, I mean, the monitors kind of go along with restoring a cabinet. I mean, you need
Yeah.
a monitor. I like to do tube swaps. That's why anytime there's a junk neighborhood trash gathering where everybody puts their stuff out on the curb, I'll drive around the entire town a couple times to find anybody that might have put a 19 or 25 or 27-inch CRT out, because I'll bring it home and put it in my shed in case I ever need a tube for a tube swap.
I know they used back in the day that thrift stores, I believe, at some point, pretty much put out a decree that says we're not taking any CRTs for resale. They'll take a flat screen monitor, a limited quantity of that.
Yeah.
But old
Well, I love when
TVs,
people put them out, because I'm like, you're putting it on the curb, I'm taking it.
all right, let's go to Matt.
Yes.
You kind of gravitated towards claw and vending machines,
Well,
and I got
today,
into that
yes.
a little bit.
Today, yes. Part of the reason is because I feel like for me, arcade cabinets, at least in my area, I feel like the pond has been fished out. You know what I mean? It's been more and more difficult for me to find arcade cabinets to fix and restore. Like 10 years ago, I could go somewhere and buy an arcade game every weekend. Didn't matter if I could go in any direction and buy an arcade game. But today, other than going to like arcade auctions, which there's one this weekend, which I'm going to, but like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, you just can't find available cabinets to work on anymore. That's what I run into. I will show you. Am I able to share my screen? I do have a picture of. Let me do this. Let me share my screen. Let's see. I'll share this window. This is the Pac-Man cabinet that was underwater for 18 days. This cabinet held up a Tron and a Journey project in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, when the river flooded at the 1,000-year flood, and the water level got up to the space between the A and the N in the Pac-Man marquee. It was on its side, and the water level got up to right about here. So one side, I think it got wet, but it wasn't submerged, but the rest of the cabinet was submerged. Now, Jeff, who owned this cabinet at the time, he was smart enough to pull out the PCB, but he didn't pull anything else out of the cabinet. So basically, after the water receded, of course, a lot of rust set in. So all the metalwork had to be redone. The wiring, unfortunately, was trashed. We had to use a donor cabinet for the harness and for all the transformers and stuff in the bottom of the cabinet. I want to say we even used a replacement CRT monitor in as well, but a lot of body work went into this, as you could imagine, a lot of cleaning. I think we went with all repro artwork except for the side art and the front art. Those were This Old Game stencils. But we were really, really happy with the way this machine turned out after saving other more rare arcade games and then being 90% submerged underwater for 18 days. We were really proud of our work on this one.
And look what I found. Share present screen. Yeah, I did look at this video.
Yes, this is the one.
That's the one. Yeah.
So,
the Arcade Body Shop YouTube channel. Gosh, 10 years.
wow, that was 10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Time flies when you're having fun, huh?
So this is the river that flooded, and in as he gets into the video, he shows the water levels on this exact cabinet. I'm glad you pulled this up because this is great to kind of reference just how bad a cabinet can get, and if you're willing to spend enough time and effort and sometimes money, how much you can bring these cabinets back to life, especially if they're made out of plywood. Particle board cabinets are a little different story. They're I'm sure many of you have dealt with particle board cabinets that have seen some water and how they turn into shredded wheat and sponges and like soak all up. But yeah, if you fast forward just a little bit, you'll see the flooded area. So here's this basement, and I think the games were in a separate room in the basement. Yeah, there it is. There it is. You're right there. So there's the Pac-Man. It's got a journey. Okay, I think Journey was on top of it, and maybe Tron on top of that. Yeah, he multiple games of his. He laid on their side and stacked them up with the more rare games at the top of the pile, and the more common games to hold those games up. So there's a great look at what Pac-Man looked like after the water receded. And it needed a good cleaning and a lot of body work and just a lot of work in general. You can see the control panels all rusty, and that box next to it was all the stuff all pulled out of it. I still have that.
Cried my eyes out.
Yeah.
Over this.
Yeah, it was an undertaking, that's for sure.
Wood hardener, I believe, and clamps to kind of.
It was a lot of wood hardener. I think he might have even replaced a couple pieces of wood that had kind of separated, delaminated too bad.
Yeah. This was an incredible restore. I don't know how many parts it was, but
it took a lot of hours and a lot of work, but it turned out looking brand new.
And yes, this got a second life because it saved. I guess it made a valiant sacrifice to save other games. I guess gave its life, but then only to rise like the phoenix from the ashes, although it wasn't a phoenix, but
he gave it a new credit.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Gosh. That was insane. I'm looking at this video and it's like, it's been I watched several parts of this, and then they up to the point where they repainted the cabinet. I don't think he got to the point where they did they got it up as a working game. I think the series abruptly stopped.
So basically, he pretty much had stopped YouTube at that point. In fact, let me check the dates because I probably have the dates here. I want to say in 2016, maybe, or so around there is when I actually drove to Myrtle Beach and I picked it up from him to take it the rest of the way. And then I started documenting it because it probably sat for a little while. And I want to say, I think around the pandemic is when I found the time, because, everyone was staying home and we weren't going into the office for work and things like that. So I think that was really when I found the time to really start spending more time doing those repairs and doing that stuff. And obviously I did the paint stencils for the artwork, but a lot of the electronic work as well. That's kind of what I spent my time doing. And I documented some of it on my channel back in 2020.
And a lot of Bondo into this thing as well.
Oh, there's a lot of Bondo in it. Yes.
So he did it looks like he did 4 parts of this and then stopped at putting videos out.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened after that, but
I think Jeff just lost interest. He was doing a lot of people were wanting him to do restores for them, and he took on. I think Jeff's a really nice guy, and he is the kind of guy that has trouble telling people no. And he took on a lot of restores for a lot of people, and then, when you have 10 restores lined up and people want their games back, I think he got a lot of upset people because he wasn't, he had a list, he had a priority list of first in, first out. So, some people would bring them their games and they'd be there for 6 or 8 months and still not have any work done yet because he hadn't gotten to them yet. And I think he got some people get upset with him. And I think it just was overwhelming. And he said, you know what? It's too much.
Yeah, this, especially you've got a full-time job and this is only a hobby.
Exactly.
And this is towards the back end of that video where this lady here, member of the family, is painting the cabinet, and that's where it leaves off, and then somewhere down the line you pick it up.
Yep.
I guess
that's it.
I guess you can label your video "Flood Restore Part 5."
Right. I could.
Yes. Rob,
I
focused mainly on Model 2
honestly,
and adapters.
Oh, go ahead, Josh or Matt.
I honestly don't believe that the normal average person doesn't understand the amount of time that it takes to restore an arcade cabinet. That it's like they don't appreciate. I've done it, and it takes a lot of tedious work, and it takes a long time if you want to do it as perfect as you can. And it's a lot of work.
100%.
I will say, I do have a little bit of personal experience in a cabinet restore. As I had said earlier, I'm not good with the soldering iron, but I bought what was a former Cubert that was converted to a Matt Mania. It's still Matt Mania, but the cabinet was in rough shape and needed a new paracord, and there's quite a bit of rust and stuff on it. Well, I didn't have to do much in the way of electronics work apart from replacing the power cord and putting a new plug on. But took the coin doors off, sanded them, repainted them. Oh, you found that.
There's a Cubert.
No, that wasn't mine. But
no, that's not
close
yours.
Enough.
That's one I did. Well, at this point, it wasn't finished yet. The side art wasn't on it. I think it still needed a button. That was right before I finished it up.
But mine, yes, it had the screen burn. The game was a working game. I got it for $100. The Cubert artwork was painted over, or at least, gosh, I can't even. The Cubert down here in the middle, I guess above the kick plate, was painted over, and then I was kind of setting it down, and then discovered, oh, it's painted over. Oh, there's the original Cubert artwork. Then I started using iso-alcohol and revealed the rest of it. But sanded the sides of the cabinet, repainted it its proper yellow color, repainted the coin doors after sanding the rust off and stuff, put new coin locks on it, and cleaned it up, and it looks pretty decent. Where was I going to go next? But it's sitting in my garage. It does get play, or I do play it once in a while. But if I ever wanted to turn it back into a Cubert, I'd have to find a control panel and the boards. And that may be easier said than done. Or
and
at least
expensive, very expensive for the boards now.
Yeah, but how much is the question? How much? Now you could get a J-Rock board, which has several of the Star games.
That's what I would do. Yeah, but even those aren't cheap.
No. And plus, the control scheme is not the same throughout.
You're right.
Keyboard is a four-way stick on diagonals.
Yep.
But it also would run Mad Planets, Screw Loose, Argus, but the control panels are not the same. Argus is a trackball. Screw Loose, joystick buttons. Mad Planets is a spinner with I believe a firing stick in there as well. Yeah, not all the same, but they all run on the same hardware. So you got to pick which game you want to convert it to. So we go back to Rob. I did mention, yes, Sega Model 2 and building adapters was your primary focus, apart from finding secrets in the on the Model 2 boards.
On the Model 2 boards, it's like I mentioned earlier, it's not a JAMA standard. So if for those of you playing at home, this is what a JAMA looks like. This is a card edge like you'd find in your PC when you put in your graphics card, a sound card. They're not the same, but it is a standardized format in which I'm going to say 95% of machines that have these will have something compatible in an arcade cabinet that has a harness which will take this edge. And what I do is I convert it to something that the Model 2 can use. Sega used their own adapter system and harness wiring for their candy cabs in Blast City. That doesn't mean they didn't make JAMA adapters as harnesses for their candy cabs, but that's not usually what shipped with them. So what I focus on is taking these inputs and outputs, power, and making it as clean as possible for people to use these in their own cabinets that aren't Model 2 equipped. And I think it's important to learn wiring, documentation, and everything about your cabinet as far as what goes where, because you have a power delivery system going to a PCB. This PCB, if it's not getting enough voltage, if it's not getting the correct amperage, you could lower the life of that PCB, potentially rare PCB, over time if you're running it like 8 to 10 hours a day in our arcade. If you're running it at home every once in a while, yeah, but still, I want to be able to focus on power delivery and a control system for people who are interested in Model 2 cabinets or adapting their existing cabinet to Model 2, so that way they don't have what seems to be a dying breed of board, Model 2. A lot of the 3D graphics chips are what's going out on those, and you'll see on eBay tons of just Model 2 boards, bad graphics. And in my early days researching PCBs, I would see just a bunch of dead boards for parts of repair. And that's why I think restoration is so important to me, is to keep these boards, the working ones, in working condition for as long as possible, so they don't end up on eBay as parts of repair, or needing one of those parts of repair to transplant graphics. Now, the Sega Model 2 uses very, very, like 144 pin chips in its graphics processing, which is not an easy undertaking for any amateur to take off and replace. I have a friend, not a friend, but I know of a specialist at his name is Ken at iRepairSega.com, and he's probably the most trusted in the biz with Sega arcade cabinets. I've sent him some boards before, very reliable, very professional, and he has worked on just about every generation of Sega arcade cabinet to know the ins and outs. And I think that type of information is getting lost. I mean, if we lose Ken, potentially we lose all that documentation and the how-to, because we'll have to start DIYing it. So I'm learning on my own alongside what Ken does. I'm not advertising myself as a replacement for Ken. Ken cannot be replaced, but the spirit of what Ken does as his side hobby or side job as a board repair person specifically for Sega, I think is important to keep video game history alive, because a lot of these titles aren't emulated as well as they should be. Specifically, the Model 2's graphics processor is not fully understood to the point where it's looks good in MAME. I'm not knocking MAME or anything, but the documentation just doesn't exist for these titles to be emulated with even 95% accuracy. And I think until those days happen in which we have something that we can consistently go to and say, yes, this behavior is what is on the actual hardware consistently, we need to preserve what we can and restore arcade cabinets in a way that people can experience them the way we did when we first laid our eyes on them.
Certainly, Goblin Ghost Arcade has several Model 2
Yes, they
machines on the
do.
floor, so I don't know what their knowledge level of Model 2 boards are.
The
But
last time I saw their Sonic the Fighters, it looks like they have a little bit of green on the CRT. In fact, my first ever experience after getting my Dynamite Cop cabinet home was taking a look at why the graphics looked so bad aside from the board, and that was my first recap experience. I was given the advice to take off a capacitor and document it. I would document the capacitance, the voltage, if the marking on the board was correct to the actual capacitor, because sometimes, as there has been a recent discovery in the Apple II motherboard, some classic Apple motherboard, that they were installed factory incorrect to actually function. So they were documented incorrectly on the PCB, but installed correctly. So a lot of people were putting them in as if the board documentation was correct. So that's always why I check.
So you mean like positive, negative?
Yes, positive, negative on the capacitor, and it was documented incorrectly on the PCB, which can happen sometimes if it's just a side note to repair people saying, oh, make sure you put this in backwards but some Joe Blow 30 years down the line isn't going to have that knowledge. So you've always got to make sure that your positive negatives are oriented in the board either correctly or incorrectly, and if it's incorrect, you got to mark that. And then I even went as far as measuring the dimensions of the capacitors to find my there are a lot of capacitor kits online. Arcade Parts and Repair has them, but for my first recap, I decided to do it myself, and I saved maybe $10 by buying capacitors on my own, and it was an experience, let me tell you, because if you don't quite know what you're doing when you're first starting out, I've soldered before.
Yep.
Soldering on something this level was very different, in which some of these capacitor the holes in which the capacitors connect to with the copper, the pads were so weak with their glue from over the years being, I don't know what happened to the CRT. Like I said, I thought it was on a laundromat outside 24/7 running. It was in dire condition.
Yep.
So some of them would come unglued from the PCB pads. So you would have to carefully, I didn't end up gluing it, but I would push it down carefully and then solder the capacitor on. So it's still solid in there, but you have to be careful with your heat, especially when soldering, because you get it too hot, you can actually damage the board and the glue that these capacitors sit on. So
Burn the board, actually.
yeah, and then I actually have a restore I'd like to show, which happened after. Let's see. I'm going to try to present an image file here.
Okay.
I ordered what's called a Versus City billboard unit, in which this Japanese candy cab would have two LED displays, and it would show how many wins in a fighting game each player had. The two people would be like sitting on opposite chairs, the screens and the billboards would be up top, telling each other how many wins that player had. So if there were a crowd of people, you would know who's winning. And I ordered this board from China, and it was in grimy condition.
Yes.
And this was my second solder undertaking, and I decided, you know what? I'm first going to clean it up, replace the capacitors, see what happens from there. And then I didn't have the proper equipment to diagnose each problem, but I could see on the traces where each problem was coming from and then replace those parts. So when I was done, I ended up with the second image that I've just uploaded here. The difference is nearly night and day. From that grimy board to this, I won't call it pristine. I made a few mistakes. In fact, this board had to be sent to Ken to fix some traces underneath, but everything is socketed. I replaced everything that was a one-to-one compatible part, and I installed new capacitor filters on it. You can see the shiny blue, and I even went so far as to make sure that the power delivery was the expected 100 volts, because in Japan, they run off of a different voltage system than we do. So I stepped down from 120 volts to 100 volts that this board is expecting.
And when you're cleaning a board like this,
yes,
what is the best way to clean these boards from going from here to here?
In my experience, and I had to ask around a lot because I didn't quite know myself, but there is a non-toxic, non-volatile cleaner called Crud Cutter, Krud. And that stuff does amazing work. And because these boards have components that can rust, you can choose to use tap water. I wouldn't recommend it. You have to dry it really well.
I imagine not, but I don't think it'd be. I wouldn't do it.
I do. I use tap water.
There are some people that do. They hose down their monitors. I am not that brave.
Oh gosh, no!
I am not that brave. That's a graffiti remover variant.
I know, but that was the first thing that came up. But
yeah, it's earth friendly. I mean, like pet friendly. No toxic fumes. I use it on other stuff now, ever since discovering it, and what you want to look for to make sure your parts will remain in pristine condition. Also, it's recommended to clean if you've got the capacitors off. I would recommend cleaning the board at that stage before putting the capacitors back on. It just prevents any leakage that might get into a capacitor, or it's just easier to clean around the capacitor areas that are open and exposed. But if you can use distilled water and a toothbrush or some kind of fine bristle brush, distilled water is something that doesn't have the stuff in it that would help cause rust in. Oh no!
You know I'm gonna do it. and actually, I typically use Simple Green. But this was just a random K7. I think it was a K7000 I had. I'm just using the dollar store, totally awesome cleaner here. And it really actually does a great job of getting rid of all this dust and nicotine and grossness. I mean, that's what I usually just spray it down. And
Oh, no, not the stickers.
Yep, stickers and all. And what I'll typically do, you wouldn't believe how fast the South Carolina sun dries up any water residue that you have in these games or these cabinets or these circuit boards or anything like that. When I do just monitor chassis or anything, when I take them out, I'll do them in like a wash tub or something like that, and sometimes give it a light brush with like a paintbrush or a toothbrush or something like that. But yeah, I mean, as long as you make sure your components are dry, this is completely fine to do. I've done this hundreds of times.
Okay. Would you ever recommend an air compressor for environments that maybe are not quite as dry friendly?
Absolutely.
Now, for some monitors, you need to be careful because they have that powder on it to help protect it from
the
cathode
aquadag
rays.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this has it here too. You can see it over in this general area and over here. That's
right.
why I typically don't use a brush on the actual tube, because you can damage the aquadag on there. It's even worse on Nintendo cabinets. So the Japanese Sanyos, you'll actually damage that even more. But typically on these Wells Gardners, things like that, it's not much of an issue.
Okay.
This is scary to me.
Right? I'm looking at this going.
I do this all the time.
As an amateur,
have you ever destroyed your monitor? Any monitors doing this?
Say that again.
Have you ever made your any of these monitors
go
completely useless after doing one of these cleans? Or
never.
You had a 100% success rate.
100%.
That's wild.
But I mean, think about it though. When you're restoring a game, I mean, you saw how this monitor started. I could literally wipe the dust with my finger. When you're restoring a game, and you want everything nice and fresh and new and clean, you have to do this. Otherwise, you're putting a filthy monitor into your restored game.
Mm-hmm.
Josh looked like he had a comment.
Usually when I wash a monitor, I do the same thing here. Like you said, you just have to make sure it's completely dry.
Yep.
What I'll do is I'll take, not for the yoke, but for the chassis itself, I'll take, say, an old 12 by 12 box and put the chassis in the box when it's uncapped. And then I'll poke some holes in the back side of the box and put a hairdryer in there, and then run the hairdryer through the box, and it'll dry that board right up, or the chassis. It's bone dry in about 10 minutes.
How long? Okay, you wash the monitor as you're doing right here.
Yep.
How long? You said 10 minutes out in the sun.
Typically, yeah, I'll leave it out in the sun for, I don't know how, just until I remember to take it out of the sun. But typically I will wait 24 hours before I apply power to any of the circuitry.
Yep.
Just to ensure that, because water can get trapped under a resistor or under a capacitor, and if you power it up and there's still water residue, you'll know it because it sizzles. So if you ever clean a monitor or any circuitry, and your monitor, you start to hear that sizzle sound when you apply electricity or power, disconnect that power immediately.
Gosh. See, now I just take cans of air and try to blow the dust off that way instead of
that'll only get you so far with these cabs, unfortunately.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess so. Sheesh. Any restore stories you have? Let's start with Josh. I mean, you started with Operation Wolf, but beyond that, you had some others. X-Men, and what else did you have? Gosh, Moon Patrol. Actually, here's a video. Let me throw this up on the screen. I gotta skip ahead. Yeah, this is the Projects on the Way video. This was last year.
Yeah.
You had the
My
X-Men.
garage
You got that going. Yeah,
I
go
see a
ahead.
Konami. I see a Midway cabinet back there.
Cruising USA, yeah.
Yeah, is that a Moon Patrol behind the Konami?
I believe it. Yeah, right behind it. Yeah. That one's now done.
That's my next restore is a Moon Patrol. I have it. I just haven't started any work on it yet. Yep, Moon Patrol.
Geez, I don't know. I have a lot of cabinets yet I want to do. The last one I did was Moon Patrol, and the one before that was X-Men. And I believe Narc was before that. And I have a Simpsons I redone, NBA Jam, Neo Geo.
There's a modder that's
Contra
broken.
cabinet.
Ooh, that poor CRT.
Yeah.
You're right. Oh my goodness.
I could just hear the hiss as it cracked.
Actually, that came from a buck hunter, and the back was open, and I was trying to take it out myself, and it rolled right out the back of the cabinet and hit the floor. And I do have some footage of it on my channel where it was cracking really slow, and I hurry up and took my phone out and started recording it, and you watched it implode on the on video. You could hear it hissing
like a snake.
You know what? I'm gonna find that real quick because I want to see.
I don't remember which one it's on, but I'm hoping it was a video by itself.
Was that a Virtual Cup I spied?
Yes.
If you need anything for it, you just hit me up.
It is working. It's just
good.
I need to do some work with the monitor.
Always. It's the calibration with those CRT games is just crazy sometimes. You get a little bit of convergence and the crosshairs will not acknowledge the corners or the sides.
That's the biggest issue I have with monitors. It's like that one faces straight up and down and uses the mirror like Operation Wolf.
Right.
Now, when you take a tube that's always been horizontal and it's converged that way, and you roll it like that, it comes all out of convergence. And I found that if you loosen the yoke and slightly make an adjustment with it, you can get that convergence and stuff back. I don't really know what the theory is on that, or if it's just the magnetism of the earth. You can degauss it all you want, and it just don't work until you move that yoke just a little bit, one way or another.
I have a friend with the House of the Dead. Video. Maybe I'll suggest that sometime.
I'm not quite sure.
Find that modder. Oh well.
It's probably mixed in with something else.
Yeah.
I don't think I put the footage on there by itself.
Right. Looked like it was. I mean, there's modder restore videos on there, but few that I looked didn't look like that was. I didn't spot anything in particular that kind of related to that modder.
I really would like to get a Marble Madness cabinet. I would like to restore
one of those. I haven't seen one of those available in years. Those are so hard to find.
This is it. Hold on. Let me skip ahead. There's the intro. This is on the Buck Hunter one. I'm going to see if I can.
I don't think it would be this one.
Okay. Because I see, I see a moth. Look at that. Yeah, that looks really disassembled there. And Boy,
I was trying to do a tube swap, and a lot of those 27 inches have bonded yokes.
yeah.
And I was kind of breaking it off to try to
Ooh.
put the 7500 yoke on there.
I do not envy you there.
This would be
That was
scary for me. I wouldn't.
It
I
didn't
wouldn't
work
even
out
dare
for
do
me.
this. No. Good night. I'm surprised the cracking monitor isn't in this one. Well, I'm still kind of scanning this video, but it doesn't look like it's in there. But good night.
Yeah, that was a mess.
I would have somebody else mess with the monitor, not me. I just pay someone for a replacement monitor, and then if they want to restore it and resell it, have at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, that TV didn't cost me anything.
Lucky.
Yeah.
I pick them up along the street, so if I get
Oh, yeah,
lucky,
you
I
did
get
mention
lucky.
You know what? I did drive by the empty shell of a TV today. It was in pieces. I don't think the screen was even there, or if it was like, yeah, it was just like dumped on the side of the road and in pieces.
That's unfortunate.
Well, I was out in the kind of the path less traveled. Put that way. Well, let's go to Matt. Any restore stories you have? I mean, you do these claw. By the way, let me say this. You're doing claw machines, vending machines. I guess claw machines were kind of one of the most popular, quote unquote, kiddie gambling games, if you know what I mean. Because now a lot of arcades have redemptions.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
A lot of redemption.
that seems to dominate lately, apart from these adult gambling pilers, which they call video games, but they really aren't. At least I don't consider them to be. But go ahead.
Yeah,
I did
so
see a claw machine in there.
My most recent restore was an Atari 720. And it literally came needing every little piece gone over, from bodywork of new, all the old Atari vinyl removed, and then bodywork, and then primer and paint and all that stuff. And then of course electronics, and repinning every connector on the harness and everything. And it's so funny because after I finished this, and I did this for a friend of mine, so it wasn't even for me. But after I finished this Atari 720, I officially retired from restoring Atari cabinets. I will never restore another Atari cabinet ever again. At least that's what I say. But who knows? But it was problem after problem after problem, and this and that, and just, man, it was just a huge headache. But it's finally done. He's happy it's working and looks brand new again. And I'm glad I was able to help him with that.
I will say, yeah, you don't have a video for this. Control scheme for 720 is different than other games.
Very different.
It's got that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has the joystick, but you got to twirl the stick around the perimeter.
Exactly.
And
it's so hard.
John's Arcade, I believe, did videos on that game.
He did, yeah.
I think a restore on that.
It's kind of funny. Like when I found out I was going to be restoring it, I'm not going to lie, I went and binged his 720 series just to see what I was getting myself into. And yeah.
I played the game. I'm not any good at it.
I was never good at that
I was trying to figure out the mechanics, but because it kind of was low-hanging fruit at Galloping Ghost. But somebody from across the pond, I believe, has the house high on that now. Tracy Gleave, I believe, has that. came over. It's like, good grief. Yeah. I was trying to look that game up real quick. No? Mike Stevenson has the house high at Galvin Arcade. 400,000.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's stood since 2018. So, but claw machines, how difficult it is to restore those. I mean,
so the thing about those is I don't do a lot of restorals on those because most of the time, the ones that are of the age that need to be restored, they've kind of worn out their life in actual like businesses and locations and today's arcades. Most people, when I had my basement full of arcade games, I did have an older claw machine down there, but it was one that was already nice, so like it didn't need restored. So I've never really done a restoral on a claw machine, whereas I just don't think they have the same collector value as classic arcade games, pinball machines, and stuff like that. Like I see, Josh, it looks like you got maybe like a big choice or something back there, or clean
I
sweep.
do see one.
Clean sweep.
Clean sweep, yeah. So I had a big choice, but very similar cabinet like that back when I had my basement full of games. But most people, it doesn't matter what the machine is when it comes to a claw machine. They just think it's cool to have a claw machine in with their games, especially if like they're having like parties or people over. Like whenever I had parties in my basement, that was always the most popular machine out of all the classics and all that stuff. And it just
really,
it killed me because it's like, I don't know. That was always the one where the line was.
That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? It's been really bizarre, and I'm going to pull this up in a second. Arcade 1-Up gets a lot of attention. Is the whole Daggum series dead? But one of the releases, I'm trying to pull this up, and this thing is not being cooperative. Let's see if I can get this up here. Because one of the bizarre releases of Arcade 1-Up, they put out a claw machine. Like, there's no way. It's like, is there really that much interest in having a consumer release of a claw machine for their own house?
There really is. Like I said,
I'd never buy one.
when I had one in with my 30 arcade games, that's always the one that the people were standing around and waiting to play. I was like, don't you want to like play like Pac-Man or Donkey Kong or Jungle Hunt? like that's where I'd be. But no, everybody was always around the claw machine.
I wonder if they were practicing with this, so when they go to a claw machine at a restaurant or whatever store, because they have claw machines but they don't have anything else but a claw machine and various items inside. Oh, he's got a claw machine. I'm going to practice grabbing stuff with it because it won't cost me any money.
And maybe that's part of it too, because whenever I used to have parties or get-togethers, I would go and I would load up on like dollar store stuffed animals and stuff like that, and I would fill the claw machine. And like the house rule was, if you want it, you get to take it home with you. And maybe that's why it was the most popular, because people could actually win stuff and take it home with them.
Yeah, good grief! There's claw machines all over the place. You have to throw a buck down. What do you? I don't play those claw machines because it's like you really got to line it up, almost perfect. You drop the claw down, and then the claw has to get around the item, and if the item is kind of wedged in and even barely, you ain't gonna pull that thing out.
Sometimes, yeah.
But then there's somebody who I guess is so good at it, they've thrown dollar after dollar down and then somehow empty the machine out.
And some machines are way easier to win than others. Like that clean sweep back there, the older Big Choice with the chaser lights around the top and the red cabinets. If you find those on location anywhere today, play those games because those are the ones that are the easiest to win.
Yeah, they don't have the little eyes that tells it you won or not. And you can adjust the power on that
Strength, yeah, exactly.
And then you can put a lower ohmed coil in it to make it grab even harder.
All right. Rob?
Yes.
Same question to you.
Yes, I actually have a very interesting... My one restore is still in progress, but I do have a good story. I was working on the sound and my speakers. I was kind of trying to get that all fixed up, and I had the marquee off, and one of the many stray cats we have disappeared for a few days. And so after a few days, another stray cat was on my cabinet looking at it going, what's he looking at? Why is he staring at my cabinet? And I'm like, oh my gosh, that cat probably got up to the marquee area and fell down in the cabinet. And sure enough, I opened my cabinet up and push, out comes a cat. So
the cat climbed into your machine.
Yes, into the marquee area. Yes, for several days. And thankfully, they did not use the bathroom in there.
Thankfully, the cat survived.
That too.
I'm surprised the cat wasn't crying its eyes out, like calling for help and stuff.
Yeah, the cat still hangs around, and we take good care of it still. So it was unfortunate that happened, but ever since then, I kept the marquee back on, and we moved the cabinet into the house. So
I didn't think the cat. I didn't think he could. I didn't think the opening was wide enough for them to get in, or at least I didn't think it was wide open.
Yeah, somehow
Totally.
they managed to get up there and then fall without hurting themselves, which is very thankful. And but yeah, pro tip for anyone out there looking to restore: make sure you have space to put this thing before you get it. I did not, so I only have one cabinet, and it's kind of in the living room now, and it's just kind of sitting there waiting to be finished. But if you have cats, make sure it's sealed up tight so they don't.
Well, here's another thing: you don't want rodents in there either. And
that's true.
I ended up putting a bar of Irish Spring in the bottom inside each one of my cabinets when they got moved into the garage, so mice would not take residence in there.
That's very smart.
Little story. My old garage. I have two cars. I still have the Geostorm for when I won it back in 1992 as the grand prize of the Nintendo Campus Challenge. I had the windows open I guess the windows were open. Well, a mouse and its babies moved in, and when I was driving the car, the mouse and the babies were suddenly on my leg. I was like, oh no. How did the... It's like I was on the road, and as I had to look for a place to release them because I was way away from my house, and make sure that all of them got out.
Right.
I mean, the babies and the mother, I guess, got separated after, because it was like the mouse and the babies were on the dash, and I was just trying to get to a spot where I could just release them in the field. And yeah, after that, yes, there's bars of Irish Spring inside the Geostorm too, because I don't drive it as much.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering how often I'm going to have to replace the bars of soap, because how much scent. Because the mice don't like the scent, but the scent isn't as strong over time.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Bizarre story. But this is the first I've heard of a cat getting stuck in an arcade cabinet. climbing through the marquee. I guess it was declawed because it couldn't climb its way out.
Oh no, it's not declawed. It's an outdoor stray, and somehow, amazingly, it didn't destroy the cabinet inside trying to get out. I don't know why it didn't, but it just decided, well, I'm gonna wait for help.
Thank goodness that cat survived.
Yep.
Because it would have been not a pleasant mess to clean up if there was a corpse inside.
Also, my psyche couldn't take it if it didn't. I would no longer have the cabinet.
No.
What a bad memory that'd be.
Oh. Anyway, for two of our guests, it's past 11 o'clock. We'll kind of start winding this down. I'll ask everybody, future goals. Starting with Joshua.
Future goals for me. I would like a Marble Madness. I would like to collect one of them. This spring, when the weather starts to get a little better, I have a Ballet Sente cabinet that I kind of like the profile of it, but it's kind of badly destroyed and rotted. So I was going to kind of use it as a pattern, and I was going to put make a cabinet just like that one, and put Russian Attack in there. That was going to be a project cabinet. I may get my pole position dug out and restore it this summer. That's probably about it. I have a 1952 jukebox that I kind of want to restore too, so I might work on that this spring and summer. I'm not quite sure.
What is your grail? Unless you already have it or are still looking for it.
Well, I kind of started with that, Operation Wolf. But as I said, I mean, I kind of wish I would have maybe be doing one of those now rather than when I first started, because there's just lots of things that I've learned since then.
Yeah.
I'm still happy with it. It's just, I think I could have done a better job at this point in time.
What's your thoughts on Operation Thunderbolt and Operation Wolf 3?
Gotta be real honest, I've never played them. Nobody's ever had them out. I've never been to an arcade that had them. My arcade experience was mostly at the Southern Park Mall, and
fun and games.
Yeah,
I've got a ton of their tokens right now.
And then maybe at the Alliance Mall, and then when we would go on vacation to Ocean City, Maryland, they had a couple arcades there, but I never had the chance to play those games like on a cabinet. So I can't give you an honest opinion of that. I'd like to.
Oh, go ahead. Oh gosh.
But
what's going on there? I have played Operation Thunderbolt, which is a 2-player simultaneous. Operation Wolf 3, if you've never seen it, kind of has more of the Lethal Enforcers vibe than the original. Full digitized actors and everything. I got distracted because I was like looking something up here. Go ahead.
I would like to get a second Daytona USA so I can link them together. And
you need help with that. I got you. Model 2.
Okay. And I would also like to get the 2 cruising cabinets I have and get them linked together. I actually would like to make a multi-cabinet of Cruising USA, Cruising World, and Cruising Exotica, and put all 3 boards in each cabinet, and then you could switch to them, and I don't know how that would work linking them together. So I mean, I'm sure it can be done.
Usually with 2 boards, I don't know about 3 or 4.
You'd be generating a lot of heat.
Yeah, because
They do make up to 6 switcher, a 6 board switcher. So I mean, you'd probably mount some little fans in there to dissipate some heat if you had to.
right. Have you ever? Now you're in Ohio. Have you heard of the Pastime Arcade in Youngstown?
Rob Burke, he owns that, and before they opened, there was a guy named Mike that was the opening manager there, and I have a friend that owns a gaming store in East Liverpool, and he had contacted him, and he said, "Hey, you guys should come up here and go through these monitors, because if you guys don't take them, we're throwing them out." And we got to go to Pastimes where they have the actual place at, and it was just huge. I couldn't believe what I was looking at, and they were like, "Hey, we got to go to this warehouse to get these monitors," and we drove down 422. I don't know, maybe 10 miles or so, and got to this warehouse, and he's taking us around through all these rooms, and there's just man, I've never seen that many machines in one place. I
And
don't
it's
even
not
think
the
I'd be
largest arcade in
exaggerating
the world either.
if I said that there's thousands of arcade or
I'm actually sharing
pinball
right now
machines
if you want to pop it up.
folded and laying like sort of on their backs facing upward, and they were stacked in there. Yeah,
I would like to go there someday.
They have a
that
lot
would
more
be their
pinball,
actual.
a lot more pinball than they do arcade. Yeah, I was up in their storage areas too. They showed me around. It was really cool.
It's amazing.
600 machines,
They have all that
400
there.
pins. Go ahead.
But their warehouse has 3-4 times that amount.
Oh yeah,
It's crazy. So anyways, we ended up filled Frankie's truck up and our van up, and his wife's car with monitors, K7400s, some K7000s, and some Cortex monitors that we got out of there. I have rebuilt 2 7400s I got from there, and that's what's in these 2 games behind me, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 and X-Men. I still have some more out in my what I call TV farm, where I keep all my found tubes on the side of the road.
Yeah. And Burke brings several machines out to Chicago for the annual Pinball Expo, which I'll be going again. Year 41. Not my 41st Pinball Expo, but
that building is impressive. It really is. But where he stores other stuff at is just it was jaw dropping. I'm like, who owns this much stuff?
Right.
I think
he's now officially in Guinness for having the most pinball machines in one collection.
I don't know on that one, because there's a place in Las Vegas.
There is the Hall of Fame
Pinball Museum, and there's like they say about 700.
Maybe in the collection total, but not on display all at once.
That's like, and that's why I say this too. This guy, he's got a lot more in the collection than he does on display as well.
Oh yeah,
Josh, yeah, confirms. I mean, he's probably got 4,000.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Well, if he gets
and down in
go ahead.
Down in the basement where he had his arcade machines, it was probably 150 by 150 foot room, maybe 200 by 200. And every machine was so stacked in there, you couldn't walk between them or around them.
Wow.
You would have had to pull stuff out to make rows to walk between stuff.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
If he wanted to, if he has that many machines, I mean, if he wanted to, he could. You'd have to acquire more building space. Maybe try to take the world's largest arcade title away from Galloping Ghost. Although, here's a revelation I got today. Right now, the Guinness World Book of Records still recognizes Fun Spot as the biggest arcade in the country. For Galloping Ghost to be recognized as the world's largest arcade, they would have to shell out $28,000 for somebody to come out and verify that they're the largest arcade in the country. Like, are you serious?
That's crazy.
No thanks.
Why are they charging 28? Why would they charge 28,000?
That doesn't.
No. And the other thing is, and there's an ad. I'm going to hide that for a second. I'm in the Guinness Gamers Edition 2025. I didn't have to pay anything. They reached out to me because they were doing, I think, top 100 things in gaming, and I'm on I wouldn't say top 100, but 100 items. I was number 55 in the book. Rarest NES game. And the rarest NES game is my 1991 Nintendo Campus Challenge cartridge, because all but one of those competition cards got destroyed or gotten rid of. Some of the Nintendo employee kept one of them. I wish I had asked for one of those cards back after I won the card and stuff. I didn't. I was euphoric over winning the tournament, so that wasn't on my mind. But I got, I submitted information, pictures of back then, New Year's weekend 1992 at Disney World Marketplace, and I'm now in the Guinness.
Nice.
Even though I'm not the greatest, the fastest, the slowest, or have the biggest this or the smallest this, because I won that tournament all those years ago, and I was connected to something in particular. That's how I got in. All right, Matt, I believe you're left on. Oh, actually, yes, Matt. Future goals are you after any grails?
No grails. I've pretty much owned everything I've ever wanted to own, and I've sold a lot of stuff too. But I think it's more the excitement of the hunt at this point. My next thing I'd like to do is go on or discover another untapped resource, another warehouse maybe that no one's been in yet, or because they got to still be out there somewhere. The last one I found was in 2021, and I can show you a quick picture or two of some of the spoils of our findings. This was one load. I think I took 9 Miss Pac-Mans out of this warehouse the last time. And,
I want to go on a warehouse raid. I've been begging Doc Mac to invite me to one of his.
That is the most exciting thing. Is, oh my God, there's a Dig Dug. Oh my God, there's a Tron. Like discovering each piece as you find them in these warehouses. So that's probably the next thing I'd like to do again, is find another warehouse to raid.
I know I had somebody on the pod like weeks ago. Gosh, Taylor Lucas, if you're familiar, if you know that name. He has been on a few raids and looking for the very obscure arcade games from back in the 70s, 80s era. where he found some, I guess, some building, like one of those abandoned abandoned building exploration videos. One of those places had arcade games in there that had been left to time. Where was this place? Well, a few collectors saw it, wanted to find it, and rescue the games inside. They got some of them out. Not everything was saved. Ironically, the only game that came out of there completely intact and started up when plugged in was a kangaroo. And that's happened multiple times in a couple of these different warehouse raid videos.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys?
Oh, go ahead.
Do you guys find, like, when you're searching on Facebook Marketplace, you'll get an arcade machine that comes up? Like, prime example, I saw one the other day, $75. It was a less than an hour drive for me. So I message, hey, I'd like to come pick this up. And they're like, oh, well, somebody's already offered me $150. And it always ends up being some sort of bidding match when it's like, you posted it for $75. Why don't you sell it for that?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like there's a secret bidding on everything I find anymore.
Yeah, you learn who has integrity and who doesn't real quick.
Yeah.
Well, you also
It's
have to
just
have the
frustrating.
means to transport the stuff too, and I don't. I have 2 cars, but I need a truck. But I don't want to let. I like driving the smaller vehicles because they get me to and from work. But I'd have to rent a truck or van to go get anything. It makes it hard for me. But Rob,
Yes.
any future goals or grails you're after? I know you've got the
Future
one
goals
you're doing.
in the immediate is to make a official store for my adapters, either on Tindy or some kind of WordPress site, just to get that word out. I'd rather people buy cheap adapters from a hobbyist point of view and something that they know works and something that's built with quality rather than trying to import something from China that is said to do the job. I take my research very seriously and want to make sure people are educated who have these machines, like I said, to keep them in running condition for a long time. So a short-term goal is to make a store to sell adapters kind of on a as needed basis. You buy it, it takes 1 to 2 weeks to build, I ship it. Long-term goal, documentation on Model 2. I'd like to get these things down to the schematic level. There's no schematics of them available currently, and I think that's an invaluable tool to those who do repair work and can follow the traces. Right now, I've just kind of been taking parts off the board to look under components, putting it back on and saying this went here, kind of mapping it out in MS Paint. But a full schematic, I think, could be valuable not only just to the repair community but the emulation community as well, to know what parts connected to what where. If they have a similar part on another machine they have emulated, maybe they can take code from that and work with that in the newer machine. And then my actual grail isn't a cabinet or a game itself, but the poster that was used to advertise, not the flyer. The flyer was like a 8x10, 8x11 advertisement for arcade owners to purchase the arcade boards. But this is an actual poster that was like 23 by 37 inches for Sonic the Fighters in Japan. And I know of 2 people who own it. Neither will separate with it. So I'm still on the hunt. I saw one on eBay, or no, not eBay, excuse me, Yahoo Japan auctions about 5 years ago sell for $300. I regret every day not trying to bid on that.
You know what? I wonder if this is it. Show present, share screen, window. Would it be this?
That is the flyer.
As the flyer.
Yes.
Looks like he is. Oops, that's not what I wanted. But here's a real close. Oh, I can't.
Yes, that is one of the Japanese flyers.
Well, I thought I found it, but well.
No. Yeah, I spend one day a week at least looking for it, and not the full day, but that grail or a Model 2 board that hasn't been repaired, a completely untouched Model 2B board. I had one. It was over rev before the collector started going. I got it for $40 untested, worked perfectly. Then yep, that's the front of the flyer. Yep.
That's the front. And, okay, that's not the ad or not the poster.
I had an over rev board, no work ever done on it, nearly mint condition, just a little bit of dust. Then 12 volts down the 5-volt rail.
Oh gosh, this can't be it. That can't be it. Is it?
No, that's not it. If you type in Sonic the Fighter's poster, Sonic Retro, after that, it should bring up the. That's close to it. I don't see it. You know what? Let me save it real quick. I know where to find it. Sonic Retro. And then I'll go ahead and share it on screen.
Yeah, because there's several here. That could be it, but
they look close.
It might be reproductions.
Let me go ahead and present the image here. There we go. I'm sharing that.
Here you go.
Oh,
yeah.
It's very pretty.
That's very cool.
That was mixed in here, actually.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
That was from the auction I passed on 5 years ago.
Well, they called it a telephone card.
The telephone card uses the same graphic, but when it's this big, I do own the telephone card. It's about this big. So it's not quite the same as having a gigantic poster. There's something just so satisfying about those colors and how all the characters are presented that makes it my grail for me.
All right. Final comments from everybody. Josh?
Well, I want to thank everybody for inviting me on and chatting. I did want to ask if you, since you were from my area, if you knew Tony and Steve from Fun and Games.
Very well. And Tony and Steve sold me my original Super Pac-Man. And yeah, I know them real well.
So I was wondering if you did, and I've had fun. I want to admit I was a little bit nervous coming in here. I've never done anything like this before. I didn't know how things were going to go, so I know there was some kinds of delay sometimes. So I just want to say thanks to everybody, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I guess this was your very first podcast ever.
Yes. Didn't know what to expect, so
I hope you enjoyed it.
I did. Thank you.
Matt, final comments?
Yeah, just want to say thanks for having me. If anyone is interested, there is an arcade and pinball auction this weekend in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It's at the Winston-Salem Fairgrounds, and it starts at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. I will be there, and I will be recording, so I will have coverage of the results and I like to go and record and post the results on YouTube so people can kind of gauge what the prices of those machines are going for, at least in my area. Now I know, some of you like you guys out there on the West Coast, I know the prices are way different, probably in Chicago as well, like the Midwest, but in my area, the prices are generally pretty reasonable, especially because a lot of them have issues in their projects, things like that. But that will be available on my YouTube channel on Sunday, probably early, like in the early afternoon or kind of late morning, something like that. For anyone that wants to see what that looks like, what an arcade auction looks like, this Sunday on my channel, you can check that out.
You're going up there. Have you been to Winners and Losers Airbnb?
So I know Scott, because I see him all the time at the auctions. I haven't been to his Airbnb yet, though. He keeps saying he's going to invite me over one time after one of the auctions, but it just never works out,
I'd say I did have Gene Moody on my pod in the past. Scott couldn't make it, but I've sent my audition for his game show, and they used it. So maybe down the road I'll make an appearance on the Starcade Revival and crush everybody.
There you go.
But Matt, thank you for joining us. And Rob, I'll let you close it out.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. It's also my first podcast.
Really?
Yes.
Because you got that fancy mic that looks like you've done a few.
I've just collected stuff over the years. I tried voice acting a little bit. Sometimes it works well for gaming. But closing comments, I just want to say that if any of you attempt to restore something and find something useful on the internet, that's great. If you come across something useful on your own, if you don't document it, no one else will know the tricks of the trade that you've experienced. Documentation is very important in this hobby because what you find that works may not be an idea someone else has. So if something works for you, if you have a manual to something, schematics to something that is basically nowhere on the internet, it might be nice to, in a way, document it. It doesn't have to be the exact document. If you want to keep that perceived value of a unique item, you can. But if you don't document it, that knowledge could be lost. And I am just an advocate of documentation and preservation to help keep gaming alive. And I think restoration is one of the important parts of preservation so that new generations can experience games as our generation experienced games.
All right, gentlemen, well, thank you all for joining me here tonight. And maybe I'll see you around. Maybe you'll make a trip up to the Goblin Ghost Arcade.
I'd very much like that
in the future. But
someday,
if you're coming out,
someday.
Come out, let me know, because I'm one of its former Gamers of the Year.
Very cool. Very cool.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Drop everybody. There we go. So that'll do it for this edition of the Crimeycade podcast. We throw these up here one before I close it out, because I am going back to the Goblin Ghost this weekend. If you're up there, they have a swap meet Saturday, March 15th in the productions office starting at 11 o'clock. Vendor tables are there. And if you're looking for anything in particular, they got stuff for sale. And kind of prelude to other conventions that are coming up. The Midwest Toy and Comic Fest in Springfield a week after. Paul Niemeyer will be in the house. Also, the voice actor for Sonic the Hedgehog, Sam Vincent, will be up there. That's at the Illinois State Fairgrounds at the Orr Building on the 22nd and the 23rd. A month later, a convention in Decatur, but we'll get to that at a future time. And Midwest Gaming Classic, first weekend of April. I believe they're about out of VIG packages, but probably the discounted rates on hotel rooms is about over as well. I got my hotel room. I got my tickets before the turn of the calendar, so I'm prepared. I'm prepared for this. And also C2E2, second weekend of April, up in the Chicago area, as I've stated before. I will not be there, but the Gambling Ghost Arcade will have a big presence there, and they'll be showing off Dark Presence. Are we gonna see a release of the game this year? I don't know. I hope we do. There's been progress on the documentary, which I'm a part of. Como Retro Game Convention in Columbia, Missouri on April the 19th. 10 a.m. start time. I may go to that, depending on how bluesy I feel after Midwest Gaming Classic. And then Breaker's Revenge, Gambling Ghost Arcade. I'm in this tournament, April 27th. Worst Tournament put out an announcement that they're taking a break for March. And Combo Breaker on Memorial Day weekend. Gambling Ghost will be taking Dark Presence there as well. Showing off the game. Well, who's my guest? Well, I don't have a guest next week. So, because of a Midwest Gaming Classic coming up, I need time to practice for the tournaments. NBA Jam Tournament Edition, certainly one of those games that I need to practice on because I finished second. I finished second the last 2 years. I took home money the first year. They didn't offer a second prize last year, but the grand prize was a guitar, an $800 guitar. I don't know if they're giving that away for the third year in a row. I don't know. But in case they do, or something prestigious being given away, I certainly want to win it this time around. So, I'm taking a break from the podcast after next Thursday's edition, and I've got some stuff I need to get off my chest that's been sitting on me. I've been alluding to it the last few weeks because an anniversary passed last month, 2 years ago, that caused a major change in life, which eventually led to me doing this podcast, but I could have done without the drama that went with it. So I have to speak out. I have to kind of get it out. Get out what's on my mind once and for all. Express my thoughts and feelings about what's happened the last couple of years and how things have dramatically changed in the last couple of months. Because it really changed in the last few months. I will also, I think there's going to be 3 major topics I'm going to cover. But certainly, those the video game addiction lawsuits, I'm probably going to just speak out against it. I've got something to say. Because this has been going on too long. I've been trying to find a guest to talk about this. And there's been nobody willing to come on this podcast and talk about it. It's like, make the case as to why this is even necessary. Nobody, no attorney, no lawyer has been willing to volunteer to come in this forum, answer questions, make the case that these lawsuits need to be filed. I see law firm after law firm after law firm in my feed about video game addiction. Not one has stepped forward. So it's time for me to call them out. And I'm going to call them out next week. So, anyway, that'll do it for this podcast. And I got to throw my doggone closing screen up. So when will I do the podcast again after the March the 20th? I don't know. at least a month off, at least until after Midwest Gaming Classic, maybe mid to late April, thereabouts, is when I think I'm going to be back. But 52 episodes, and this will be 53 next week, and I will just take some time off. Now, I will promote this thing. I will promote the reruns of the Crimeycade podcast and get some new viewers, but I also need to get I need to get more subscribers. Well, not necessarily more subscribers, followers. People following the Facebook page, people following the Twitch channel. I need to get to 100 followers on Facebook at least. I'm going to repost past interviews I've done on my Facebook feed and go from there. But anyway, that'll do it for the Crimeycade podcast. I hope to see you around the arcade soon. And have a good night, everybody. And we'll see you next time. Good night.